Shalom. Welcome to Meir TV and part of our Parsha series. This Shabbat we're going to be reading the section called Vaetchanan as one of the continued speeches of Moshe Rabbeinu almost about 1 month prior to his passing away. Amongst the things that he's going to be sharing with the nation of Israel was his request, his ongoing request. Can he cross the Jordan River and enter into the land of Israel? This Parsha has a special Haftarah reading, the reading of the prophet from the book of Isaiah, the reading called Nachamu, Nachamu Ami, consolation or comfort, comfort to my nation. Today, our guest here in Meir TV is Rav Menachem Weinberg. Shalom, Rav Menachem, and welcome to our series.
Shalom, thank you.
I'd like you to expound upon the point of what is Nachamu, Nachamu, what is the word consolation or comfort, and why this double comfort here by the prophet Isaiah.
Okay, so in the context you mentioned about Moshe Rabbeinu, perhaps he himself needed some consolation. Ultimately, he did not merit to go into the land of Israel. But together with him, all the Jewish people, we've just been through 3 weeks of mourning for the Beit HaMikdash, which we don't have. And like any mourner, comforters, menachamim, come to the house of the mourner and they try to give him Nehama. What is this Nehama? What can you do when you enter into the house of someone who's bereaved and mourning for his loved ones? So it could be that there's actually two meanings to the word Nehama. As you mentioned earlier, there are two translations. One translation is to comfort the mourner, and the other translation is to console. And these are two very different things. As a matter of fact, perhaps the comfort is really the only thing that we can do for them. We can tend to their needs. We can see what if they need something to eat, something to drink. Maybe we could even make them feel a little more at ease because they know they're not alone, to empathize with them. Perhaps the condolences which we give is in some way making them feel not alone and they're in it with someone else. We can make them feel more comfortable, comfort like comfortable. But there's another level of Nechama, which we translate as consolation, which is a much deeper experience. And this is something perhaps we don't even know how it's done. We say, Hamakom yenachem etchem. We turn to God and say, only God can really console one. Consolation is a much deeper level of actually coming to terms with the loss and being able somehow to take it and build something new from it, to use it as a grounds from which something else can grow. And in some way you realize that the way you saw things up till now, perhaps when your loved one passed away, when the tragedy occurred, everything was dark and it seemed like a dead end. Perhaps it's not a dead end. There's a way to actually grow through this tragedy.
May I ask you, Rav Menachem, how does this relate to the words of the prophet Isaiah that we're going to be reading this Shabbat?
Right, so the truth is we use the word Nechama, and the prophecy starts with Nachamu, Nachamu Ami. Perhaps this double language refers to two types of Nechama, maybe also to two Menachems. Here we are, Rav Menachem, Listman and Weinberg. But the truth is, the term Nechama, we find it first in the Torah, in Bereshit chapter 6. Vayinachem Hashem, ki asat ha'adam ba'aretz, vayitatzev libo. It's a very strange phrase that God somehow had this Nechama. What does this Nechama mean? So if you look at Rashi there, Rashi, Rabbi Shlomo Yitzchaki, he says his second interpretation is that God had a change of heart. He changed his mind.
What? Is there a change in regards to the divine entity? I thought God is metaphysical, not changing. What do you mean by that?
It's a wonderful question. As a matter of fact, Rashi relates, as the Talmud does, that there was a certain individual who asked Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha, says, does your God know the future? And he said, of course he does. He said, so then how come he changed his mind here regarding man and humanity in the world? And Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha asked him, do you have any children? He says, yes, I have a child. He says, and when he was born, were you happy? He says, of course I was happy. And he says, but don't you know that one day he's going to die and he's going to go through all sorts of difficulties in life? And he says, of course I do. So how could you be happy on the day that he was born? He says, at the time of happiness, there's happiness. And at the time of sadness, there's sadness. But the Midrash adds one more thing. And he says, also, perhaps I'm happy because I know all of the future generations, they're going to come out for them. And so the Midrash says, God knew about all the tzaddikim that are going to eventually come out from the Jewish people, from man which he created. And so perhaps in this Midrash, this story tells us that, again, these two aspects of Nehama. On the one hand, you feel some sense of comfort in the here and now. Right now, perhaps I can find something good, I can find some way to deal with my tragedy. But also there's an element of seeing the tragedy and having a new perspective on the tragedy. Seeing it in a larger context. Seeing that in the future, all the tzaddikim that will come out of it, perhaps all the good things that will grow from this tragedy which we experience here today.
Do you know, this idea that you're conveying reminds me of the famous Gemara at the end of Masechet Makot, when Rabbi Akiva was viewing the unfortunate situation of destruction on the Temple Mount, and his fellow scholars were crying, whereas he laughed as an expression of happiness. And we usually try to understand the inner understanding of Rabbi Akiva, that he's looking to the future. He's seeing what's going to be built from the situation. That reminds me also like a Talmudic passage of consolation or comfort. What do you think?
It's beautiful. I want to share with you perhaps an idea I heard from my Rosh Yeshiva at one time, Rabbi Chaim Druckman, Shlita, who explained this passage. And he said a wonderful idea that it doesn't say that Rabbi Akiva was laughing or happy because of something he saw in the future. He said even in the destruction, even in the present, he was able somehow to find the silver lining, find within the prophecy of destruction which he saw coming to pass in front of his eyes, there were shualim, foxes in the Beit HaMikdash. And he said this itself, the fact that there's this terrible tragedy, is a sign, is an omen. It gives us some kind of consolation that something good is going to happen, that the prophecies of comfort, the prophecies of redemption will come to true, just like we see the prophecies of destruction happening.
Well, that's a very deep idea. Thank you very much, Rav Menachem, for sharing this wonderful idea of comfort. And let us pray that the nation experience a lot of comfort and consolation in these days, in the days that we're having a war in the Gaza Strip. May all our soldiers come home healthy and complete, B'ezrat Hashem. And we'd like to thank you, the audience, for joining us. And we'll meet next week for another part of our series on Parshiot HaShavua. Next week, Shabbat Parshat Eikev. Thank you and have a nice day.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.